Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Bava Batra, pages 47 through 53, Mem Zayin through Nun Gimel. 47. Amar Rav Huna, Telayuv Desa bin Zivine Zvine. If someone was pressured, or was hung up by his, upside down by his feet, pressured into selling something, and then he consented under duress, the sale is a valid sale. My timer. What's the logic here? I mean, why should we consider something that's done under duress to be legitimate in a financial transaction? Well, the logic is that people normally don't sell their possessions unless they have extenuating circumstances which force them into the matter. They don't really want to do it, but they feel compelled to do it given the pressures involved. And so, yet those sales are all considered valid. Here too, with physical duress from the outside, the same thing will hold true. So the Gemara then says, well, but maybe not. Maybe self-pressure, meaning concerns about one's other aspects of life that compel you to sell a property to raise funds to pay off whatever other debt, that is a legitimate basis for a sale, because I make my own decisions, even though I don't want this decision, but I had to make it, as opposed to physical compulsion from someone else, from an external source, that might be totally illegitimate and therefore not a sale. 48. Amar Meimar, Tilayuha, V'Kadosh Kiddushin. If a woman is physically compelled into accepting Kiddushin, it's valid. Mar Bravashi Amar, B'Ishavade Kiddushin Lohava. No, the alternative is definitely not valid Kiddushin. It's not considered matrimony. Who asa shaloka hogan? Why is it not considered a matrimony? Didn't she accept? The answer is this man who used physical force to compel her consent acted shaloka hogan inappropriately. Therefore, the sages asuimo shaloka hogan, they'll act quote unquote inappropriately towards him. And they will uproot the kiddushin that he tried to establish, so that it took hold, but the rabbis undo it because we're not happy with this man's behavior. 49. Memtet. Amarava, anyone who says, I don't want to avail myself of an enactment of the sages done for my benefit, has the prerogative of saying so and then abandoning that takana and not applying it to themselves. Higonzot, Shomenlo, we'll listen to them. Mike Higonzot, what's an example? A woman, a wife can say to her husband, Eini nizonet v'eini osa. I do not want to receive your daily supply of sustenance, my daily bread, my food. I will feed myself. And I will not work for you, because the takana, the enactment was that a woman will produce some financially significant product with her handiwork in exchange for the food she's getting every day by her husband. But if the woman doesn't want to do that because maybe she earns more than normal and she wants to keep her earnings for herself, or whatever other factor might be in play, she can say, I don't want your food and I'm going to keep my handiwork. Nun. 50. Ein chazaka linizakin. There is no chazaka when it comes to harm or damage done to someone else. That even though you may have used a certain property not belonging to you for X number of years, for 3 years, to establish a right, a presumption that you can continue to do this, there's no chazaka for harmful things. However, the sages say that it can be narrowly interpreted as kutra betakise when it comes to smoke and using something as a latrine. Those things, even if they've been done for a while, can be undone because the chazaka does not apply in those kinds of nizakin damage situations. 51. Nun Aleph. That there are certain categories of people who, if they make use of someone else's possessions for an extended period of time, nonetheless a chazaka is not thereby established, and these are relationships where they're cozy relationships, familial relationships, and we could expect that one would be using somebody else's stuff. So, for example, a woman cannot establish a chazaka on the property of her husband. So the Gemara says, Peshita, it's obvious that she can't. Kevan di'itla mizoni. Since after all, he's feeding her on a regular basis, and so we're not surprised that she's using from his stuff. So, mizona de kachel, she's eating his stuff. Well, the answer is it's still necessary to teach this law because even if there is another property that was set aside to feed her, still, even with further properties, she cannot establish a chazaka on her husband's stuff. Nunbet 52. Im kibel pikadon, if a person receives a deposit from a katan, a minor, yaselo segula, what should you do with this deposit that was given to you by on behalf of a minor? You're not going to give it back to the minor because he could squander it. He's not competent to maintain his own financial resources. So, what kind of segula, trust, should you create for the kid? Rav Chisda said a Sefer Torah. You buy a Torah scroll for the kid because, after all, a Torah scroll will give you education, and education is a Jew's best friend. Rabbi Barav Huna Amar Dikla Dachamini Tamri. Alternatively, you buy a date palm for the kid, and because the date palm is consistently going to yield fruit, and that fruit is going to be financially worthwhile for the kid to have to provide sustenance and a source of income in the future. Nun Gimel 53. Kama Kol Shehu. So the rule was that if you did some proprietary act on property which had belonged to a deceased convert with no heirs, you thereby become the owner of that property. But how much do you have to do as a proprietary act? Kiddush Shmuel, as Shmuel explained, Gader Geder, if you were making a fence, Veishtimo la'asara, and you completed the 10 tfachim of the fence. So it could be you only did one tefach. It already was built 9 tfachim, and you built the 10 tefach, boom! You've done a significant act on this property, and now that's the chazaka yours. Uparatz pirza, or there was a gate around the property, a fence around the property, and you created an opening, a pirza, a gap in the fence, kadeshi kanes v'yetzeba, wide enough for a person to go out and to come in. If you do either of these things, hareizu chazaka, behold, that is a sufficient act as to be called a chazaka and to give you ownership of this previously unowned property, which had once been the property of a convert with no heirs. Everyone have a great week.